Hello everyone. In this video we will discuss real-time system concepts of mutual exclusion and methods of obtaining exclusive access to shared resources. Let us start from the learning outcomes. After completing this session, student will be able to demonstrate concept of mutual exclusion and discuss the most common methods of obtaining exclusive access to shared resources. First one, disabling interrupts. Second one, performing test and set operation. Third one, disabling scheduling. And last is using semaphores. So let us begin with one by one. Mutual exclusion. The easiest way for tasks to communicate with each other is through shared data structure. This process is especially easy when all tasks exist in a single address space. This is important. All tasks exist in a single address space and can reference elements such as global variable, pointers, buffers, linked list, etc. So while sharing, we must ensure that each task has exclusive access to data to avoid contention and data corruption. So there are various common methods to obtain exclusive access to shared resources. First one, disabling interrupt, performing test and set operation, disabling scheduling, and last is important one, using semaphores. We'll start from the easy approach, that is disabling interrupt. So disable interrupt before accessing critical section and then re-enable afterwards. So for accessing shared resources, so simply you can disable interrupt and then execute the code or critical section and then again re-enable afterwards. So the important point is should ensure the process will not be interrupted while accessing the shared memory. And second is can be problematic if the process does not re-enable the interrupt, because interrupts are important. So if we are going to disable it, so that should be properly re-enabled. So problem occurs when the re-enable of interrupt will not occur properly. So approach is simple. First one, disable the interrupts, then access the resources, whatever read write from to the variables, and third one is re-enable the interrupt. So this is very easy approach to access the resources. Now we will study about the one concept, that is interrupt latency. So the interrupt latency should be disabled for shortest amount of time. The longer time it is disabled, the higher the interrupt latency. Interrupt latency is defined as interrupt latency equals to what maximum time interrupt is disabled plus the time to execute first line of ISR. So interrupt latency is what maximum time interrupt is disabled plus time to execute first line of ISR. Next is interrupt response. The interrupt response is defined as the time the reception of the interrupt and the start of the user code which will handle the interrupt. So let us discuss from the formula. Response time equals to interrupt latency plus what? Time to save CPU context. Next is interrupt recovery. So interrupt recovery is defined as the time required for the processor to return to the interrupted code. So again interrupt recovery time will be there, so that it equals to time to restore CPU context plus time to execute from the return from interrupt instruction. So we will discuss in the coming picture, that is this one. So this is the time where interrupt request is there, and this is interrupt service routine, and interrupt latency is time from interrupt request to first line of ISR, that is this one. So this is what interrupt latency, and interrupt response is addition of this interrupt latency plus time taken to save CPU context. This is what interrupt recovery. The interrupt recovery means CPU context restored plus the time of first value of sorry, the time of first instruction after interrupt. Now let us see second method. Second method is test and set method. So two functions could agree that to access a resource they must use a global variable called log to indicate if critical section is currently being accessed. If log is set, then wait. Otherwise enter to the critical section. So that is test and set. This is called test and set operation. To prevent the other function from accessing the resource, the first function test and set the variable to simply 1. What happens if a process is interrupted from running just after reading the log is set? So this is what proposed solution. Assume turn is initially 0, process 1 and process 2. So this is process 1 code while, so this is condition turn not equals to 0, and if this condition is fail, then code run to the critical region. And for this process, if if this condition turn not equals to 1, if this condition fails, and then code run to the critical region. Now remember here after critical region turn equals to 1 and turn equals to 0. So strict alternation is what? So what happens when the process 1 is slow in executing? Process 1 eventually is a blocked waiting on process 2 to complete its non critical section. So this is what, this will violate our condition of no process running outside the critical region may block another process. So this is what, this is violates the law. The third one is disabling and enabling the scheduler. This is also one important one. If your task is not sharing variable or data structure with an ISR, so you can disable and enable the scheduling. So in these two or more tasks can share data without the fear of corruption. In this case, even the scheduler is locked, interrupt are enabled. So even if interrupt occur, what it will do? It will execute immediately after ISR, and it return to same task even if higher priority task is also ready. So this is what its function, lock condition, and you can access share data in here, and again it will unlock. Next and last important point is semaphores. Semaphore is a key to access shared resources. There are various operations performed on semaphore. First one is wait for semaphore, then release semaphore. So it will also solve problem of deadlock. What deadlock meaning? Where two tasks are unknowingly, this word is important, two tasks are unknowingly waiting for resource held by other task. So semaphore is of 8 bit, 16 bit or 32 bit number. Semaphore are used to, first one, control access to shared resources, that is mutual exclusion. Second is signal the occurrence of event, and last one is allow two tasks to synchronize their activity. So these are the various important functions done by semaphore. First one is control access to shared resources, that is best one. Second is signal the occurrence of an event. And last is allow two tasks to synchronize their activities. So semaphore, task 1, task 2, and this is what shared resources. If task 1 wants the shared resources, it will take acquire the semaphore and then it will use shared resources. After using shared resources, it will release the semaphore, and then task 2 uses that semaphore to use shared resources. So operations are, first one, initialize, means we have to create the semaphore. The syntax is OSM create. Next is waiting condition, OSM pend. So in OSM pend, task desiring perform wait operation. If available semaphore value is decremented and start execution. If value is 0, requesting task will wait for the semaphore. That's why OSM pend means waiting. And if timeout, then requesting task is executed and error is returned. So this is how OSM pend works. And third one is OSM post. So semaphore value is incremented, and if requesting task is having high priority, it will resume the execution. This is one function, that is synchronizing two tasks. Task 1 and task 2, these are synchronizing. So a task can be synchronized with an ISR or other task when no data is to be exchanged. In this case, semaphore is drawn as a flag, and flag which is used to signal for occurrence of an event. A task initiates an input output operation and then waits for semaphore. After getting semaphore, both the tasks will work. So that's why synchronizing of two tasks is possible by using semaphore. So it has unilateral operations. But there are various problems of semaphore. Let us discuss it one by one. It is very tempting to conclude that they represent solution to all our shared data problems. That is not true at all. Semaphore work only if you use them perfectly. So let us discuss it one by one. First is forgetting to take the semaphore. That is one problem. The semaphore only work if every task that accesses this shared data for read or for write operation uses the semaphore. Second is forgetting to release the semaphore. That is also one problem. If any task fails to release, then the semaphore, the every other task that ever uses the semaphore will sooner or later block waiting to take the semaphore. And third one is taking the wrong semaphore. So this is serious problem than taking semaphore. If you are using multiple semaphore, okay, so 1 2 3 semaphore if you are using, then taking the wrong one is as bad as forgetting to take one, because that will task will confuse this semaphore is of which one. And next is holding a semaphore for a too long. Whenever one task takes semaphore, every other task that subsequently wants that semaphore has to wait until the semaphore is released. So these are the very four problems related to semaphore. Up till now we have discussed what is the concept of mutual exclusion and various methods to access shared resources. First one was disabling interrupt, performing test and set operations, disabling scheduling, and last one was using semaphore. So let's move on to the next video.